Hi, I'm Stephen Yan from Macquarie Capital. I'm joined by Jamie Montgomery, obviously the founder of the Montgomery Summit, here to discuss some of his takeouts from the conference so far and what he's sort of seeing in the tech sector and media sector.
The technology industry is about a $1.2 trillion industry, and there's great winners and losers, and the whole IT infrastructure is being ripped out and replaced. And there's several dozen highly disruptive companies here at the summit this year. They're doing great things in the IT infrastructure, but cloud services, cybersecurity, and they're great companies, and they're great opportunities for Macquarie to work with them.
Yeah.
And it's just really exciting.
Any that really stand out at this point?
And we look at about 3,000 companies and narrow it down to a couple hundred that we want to invite, and we have a screening group that works with us in the top venture funds in the country. And you start to pick out areas that are really starting to accelerate from a revenue growth point of view or customer adoption. And sometimes companies hit an inflection point where, and the big data has been spoken about a lot, and there's a sort of subset of unstructured data, which is going from about a $4 billion a year market now to about a $25 billion market in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
There's some great companies being built there. What do you do with all this data? How do you access it? How do you store it? How do you use it? Some great companies there. It's just the whole ability for companies to scale and offer services globally quickly. And AWS, Amazon Web Services, is a great example.
Yeah. What's your kind of take on the ability for some of these great companies to finance at the moment?
I would say that not all the risk is priced into the valuations. They're pretty high valuations. And what happens in a time like this where the credit markets are pretty loose, is, those negative interest rates, effectively, you move to an area where there's no risk premium, and you have companies that are valued maybe 1, 2, 3 years ahead of where they should be.
The conditions being distinctly different.
In the last bubble, you had the new companies with super high valuations and the incumbents with super high valuations, and we all know that there's a zero net sum game, right? I mean, you can't, the losers can't win in the at the same time the new winners are winning. I mean, there has to be some give. So you're starting to see some market cap taken off some of the traditional players and moved over to the new players. So you look at Zillow. I mean, Zillow's a great company, for example, but that was probably a $25 billion enterprise market, all the classified advertising for all the newspapers, and that's just been vaporized by Zillow. And Zillow is probably a $5-7 billion market cap company. So net, there's probably been a reduction in market cap relative to the scale, the opportunity. So I think you have to look at it very carefully.
Any standouts this
year? 9 years ago we had Facebook, and it was just fantastic. You could tell. And then we had Twitter the following years, Trulia, Splunk. And there's another Facebook here.
Yeah.
I just don't know who it is. I mean, I wish I did.
There's so many good companies, right?
Well, there's a couple dozen good companies. We look at every company, and we talk to their investors, and then we measure how many one-on-one requests they have, and like 50 people want to meet a company. So, geez, maybe there's something there, but I don't know. Maybe there isn't. Wisdom of the crowd isn't always
That's
true.
right. Yeah.
But we look for that, and I think there's a number of companies that we're pretty excited about in the enterprise space this year. CoreOS, Coho Data, Pernix Data, one of the companies you guys brought in. Really interesting, bracket computing. We have a number of companies that premiere here.
And in your conversations with the leaders of these companies, the entrepreneurs and the investors that are backing them, what are the sorts of things you're hearing from them?
Getting the best talent, keeping the right talent, trying to how to attract the 25 to 35-year-old employees and retain them, how to make work interesting, how to create a sense of mission. So the war for talent is a big issue. Capital's not as big of an issue this year as it might be in other years, but that maybe in the future might come back. I think mobile first platforms, very everywhere you go, mobile first. Emerging markets, big, and I think India is the story this year. There's probably 50 million plus new broadband subscribers a year in India right now. Think about the daily addition. It's 1 million a week. 200,000 a day or so coming online broadband. Those are huge numbers. You're adding an equivalent of a U.S. broadband subscriber base every year now in India.
What led you to work with Macquarie to begin with?
Macquarie is a very strong global brand. It's strong in some of the emerging markets, which would be more important, like China and Singapore and India and the Asia Pacific region in the future. And Macquarie is very aspirational. We're aspirational. Macquarie also has a core as a merchant bank and thinks about investments and that's really where we come from too. I think about equity, so we've done some investments together with Macquarie.
What are the sorts of things that some of these companies look for in a corporate advisory or capital markets relationship?
The internet's leveled the information field. 10 years ago or more, firms like Macquarie would have a lot of proprietary information and knowledge, and when I ran Montgomery, we had that as well. And with the advent of the internet and open databases, that's pretty much been obliterated. So you have to say, all right, what's important? And I think contacts in the industry with the buyers, strategics is very important. There's an opportunity there both for capital markets offerings, IPOs, as well as M&A advisory, and I think there'll be a lot of buying, a lot of activity. Quite a few of the big Chinese companies are here this week, and they'll be very active making acquisitions over here.
For a young person looking to start out in banking and specifically tech-focused banking, what kind of advice could you give them?
If you're coming out of school, it's an exciting time because you're really you're earning a salary to learn more than you ever learned in school. I mean, it's exciting, and 2 or 3 years goes very quickly for an analyst. And what I think is very important is that you work in a firm that has both the substance and reach of a global firm like Macquarie, but also has a smaller team where you get more intimate relationship with the customers and do real client work. So really the best of both worlds, and that's what should make it very attractive to some of your incoming team.
Thanks, Jamie.
My pleasure.
That was very interesting comments there. Thank you.
My pleasure, Stephen.